what's going on, and welcome to Designer Head Podcast. My name is Jan, and I will be your host. This is a podcast where I will be talking about technology, design, intersection between design and technology, and basically using this platform as my brain dump. If you like it, awesome. I really would love for you to follow me and follow my episodes and spread the word. If you don't, well, I'm sorry, but actually I'm not. My podcast, and I'll do with it whatever the hell I want. And so, without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hey, what's going on, everyone? And welcome to the third episode of Designer Head Podcast. This episode is going to be slightly different. The reason why it's going to be different is because it's going to be essentially a recording of my conversation with Joanne Weaver of the Weaver Group. Joanne is a specialist recruiter in design industry across the tech startup world. And I've known Joanne for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5-ish years. I don't remember. We've done group sessions before together. She was my guest on one of the ADPList group sessions that I've done, I think, a couple of years back. And I decided to invite her again because, well, the industry. We all know what is happening. We are all kind of feeling the effects of mid-23 to late 23, and it's still going on. And so I wanted to have a slightly different perspective and not just have people pick my brain. So I decided to invite her and have a conversation around the industry, around the current job market, what's going on, what does she feel about that, where is it going, and offer her unique perspective as a recruiter of how she looks at different job applications, portfolios, resumes, and then the list goes on. Mind you, fair warning, I guess, is that this episode is going to be longer, way longer. And the reason is because it was a group session on ADPList and it lasted for about an hour with about 50 or 60-ish people dialing in. So hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, if you disagree with what I'm covering, what I'm talking about, always feel free to find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. Just reach out, ask questions, ask me anything you want to ask me, and feel free to say, hey, I want you to talk about this subject or that subject, and I will consider it. Another warning that I have is that the sound of my mic in this conversation is a little off. I think the mic was disconnected, and so my computer basically is picking this up. I apologize in advance, but that's the only recording I have, and so unfortunately, that's what it is. So hope you enjoy it. All right, welcome to my monthly sessions. So typically my monthly sessions are not with guests. Typically it's just me talking shit about shit and people ask me a bunch of questions and I try to answer and help out as much as I possibly can. Because of everything going on in the industry right now, I decided to reach out to a friend of mine that I've known for, how long did I known you now? For 3 years, 4 years?
Yeah, some number of years.
Yeah. Incredible. Time flies.
Yeah.
We hadn't spoken for about a year and a half, and then I reached out and she's like, oh, we haven't spoken so long. Jesus, time flies.
Word.
Yeah. And so I wanted to invite Joanne here. Joanne is, I would say, probably the most interesting and knowledgeable and I guess up-to-date recruiter in the design industry, at least in New York. But I might be mistaken, and maybe
the world, definitely the world,
maybe nationwide. Or we're taking over the world.
Small, Jan. You're thinking too small.
Yeah, I'm thinking too small. I'm sorry. I moved out to suburbs, and suddenly my worldview dropped to like localities. You know,
it happens
from the world view of New York and Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to invite Joanna here for a few things. One is I have some questions, and I think others would love to hear my questions and Joanne's answers. I want to make something fairly clear, I guess. Me personally, I can't answer a recruiting and job market and everything else outside of the United States. Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm just not aware of what's happening there. I have some indications and awareness of what's happening in Canada just because they're close by neighbor and very much similar economy. I don't know if Joanne has any knowledge about the recruitment and job market industries in Italy or some other European countries.
Very minimal. Very minimal.
I will leave it up to her.
Yeah.
And so let's kick it off. And Joanne, would you like to introduce yourself and tell people who you are and what you do and how long you've been doing this?
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name's Joanne Weaver. I am the co-founder and owner and president and grand poobah of the Joanne Weaver Group, which was founded. I founded it in 2007. So this is our 17th year in business. We're a boutique recruitment firm that specializes in UX and product design. So we've been doing that since day one. Prior to that, I was Razorfish's national UX sourcer. So I was finding what they used to call information architects. This is going to, show you how long I've been in this industry. So information architects, which is now modern day UX and product designers, content strategists, and user researchers for all of their offices across the country. Before then, I was in a staffing agency where I learned the trade. I brought digital to them because I had come from the late 90s in San Francisco. That's where I cut my teeth in the tech industry. It was like the crazy San Francisco goldrush.com. So that's where I got into this wacky industry. I met incredible, super smart, forward-thinking, futurist people, many of whom I'm still in touch with today. It was just such a life-changing role and just life-changing environment. So I've been sticking in it ever since. So this is my 25th year in the tech industry. And as far as the business is concerned, so we're based in New York, but we work nationally. Within the US, we place freelance, temp to perm, and full-time people in UX and product design roles. We also do product management. We're also dabbling in front-end technology, which I never thought we'd do, but now we're covering the whole trifecta of the product development org. And we work mostly with, I would say, tech startups, both early stage and late stage, but we also work with Fortune 500s. We work with some design firms that are in the kind of the product and UX focused side of things. And the business is me, my business partner, Rebecca Levy. And that's basically what we do in a nutshell. So thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here and to chat with all of you guys. Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. I keep trying to call you Rebecca. I don't do this. Okay, we're kind of in the same when it comes right down to it. Fill each other's I hope you don't mind. I'm going to share your website with the group here. Oh gosh, please be kind. It's really old. We're getting it. Actually, I have a meeting right after this about a rebrand and a website redesign. So it's what it is. This is exciting. I would love to see the next iteration of it. But guys, also don't overflow them with a bunch of messages and emails and whatnot. Unless you truly need help and they see something on their website you want to apply for, then do so. Don't kill them with too many emails. So can I be specific around that? Oh, sure. Go for it. Sure. So we tend to be able to work only with people that have 2 or 3 years of relevant experience within, UX and product design. So I'd say if you're just starting out, if you're not in the States, we probably can't help you. Feel free to, link in with me if you'd like to. You would need my email address to do so. So I'm actually going to put a couple of things in the chat. So this is our little 2-pager that we use instead of our website because it looks a little better. And then my email I'll put in the chat as well, which you'll need to link in with me. So feel free to link in with me. I like to connect with lots of different people all over the world. But as far as me being able to actually help you right now, if you have 2 or 3 years of relevant experience, feel free to send me your information. Probably can't talk to you unless we have an actual open role for you. And we can kind of talk about the state of the industry as well. But yeah, so just to put a little more specificity around it. Awesome. All right. Thank you for that. Let's start with some interrogation. I guess I have a first question for you, Joanne. Yeah. So I have been looking around and seeing in some job descriptions that some companies asking for their potential hires in this industry to have some sort of experience with AI prompting.
How do you feel about this? Is this something you actually see in the industry growing, or you see this more and more other requirements from employers where they're looking for designers having experience and knowing how to prompt an AI?
So truthfully, that is the first time that I've heard that.
Oh.
I didn't know that a lot of jobs or companies were asking for that. So that's not in my world. But that's interesting that you say that. That's good to know that's out there. I would say it is important to know AI enough to be dangerous, right? Like just to get into the tools, get under the hood, play around with them. I think everybody at this point has probably played with Chat GPT. Sora's come out now. I'm not sure how accessible that is to the public, but it seems like even people that are not in the tech world that I'm friends with that are like in like the movie business, for instance, in LA, like they're making their own commercials with Sora. So I think just showing that you are forward thinking and that you are interested in this zeitgeist. I mean, AI it feels very much like, and this is going to, to take you back in time, it feels very much like when the internet was exploding, like when website design was becoming a thing in the late 90s, everybody was flocking to the digital industry and the tech industry. People that didn't really have a lot of tech skills because there wasn't a lot of jobs before then in this industry. So everybody kind of got into it. They leveraged whatever skills they had, and then they carved these really incredible careers for themselves just based on, hey, I don't know a lot about it, but I know some, let me get in. I feel like we're in that moment again right now, which is people are like, hey, I don't really understand this yet. It's really nascent. Or maybe some people really do understand it. They're really like delving into it, which is great. But I think if you're slow to the AI game, I would definitely recommend that you ramp up on it, read up on it, understand who the major players are, get into it. I think prompting is going to be, that seems like a major way that people are using AI. Like if you don't know how to prompt it, you can't really use it. So I think that seems like a valuable skill. Whether that's going to be a requirement, I haven't seen that yet across the board, but it very well may be in like 6 months to a year. I mean, these things kind of take off algorithmically, exponentially.
Awesome. I have another question. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and it was almost like a debate, and that debate was around cover letters. Now, it wasn't necessarily a debate of having them or not having them. It was a debate of should you create or write unique cover letters for each position or each application or each company or whatnot, or should you just do kind of like a standardized cover letter where you just say something along the lines of like, hey, my name is so-and-so, I've been in this industry for X amount of time, I've done so-and-so, here's my accomplishments, here's my credentials, I would love to talk. Thank you. So what's your take on that?
So what I'm about to say is my take, but it's also the take of two other design recruiters that I host a bi-weekly session with called Design Unfiltered. It's every other Wednesday at 1:00 Eastern. We had this discussion amongst the three of us and then also the group that was attending. So our overarching opinion of them is that they're not necessary. Like if somebody sends me their resume and a cover letter, to me personally, that brands them as a little old school. Like I think of cover letters as being something that either executives are doing. That seems to be, because they're like later on in their careers, like that was de rigueur, 10 or 20 years ago to make a cover letter. I think unless a company specifically asks for one, people are not expecting you to have one. And I think what people do instead of a cover letter is they actually just use whatever information would be in the cover letter and put that in the email itself, right? So I think a problem with cover letters and what a lot of people run into is that they are very generic and everybody tends to say the same thing. This could also be a comment about people's like objectives or, profile at the top of their resumes. If you have things in there that are very trite that everybody has, like I'm a team player, I'm collaborative, I work really well cross-disciplinary, with product and dev, those things, they're very throwaway phrases, even though they might very well be true. It's not going to set you apart. And I think this is something I really want to impress upon everybody right now is that in this particular snapshot in time, it's a really tricky market. There's less jobs out there. We're starting to see it kind of blip back up, which is nice. but it's, there's a lot of layoffs. There's a lot of people looking for jobs at the same time. So the market is really flooded with candidates. So in order to make yourself stand out, you really have to think about, and I would really put time and energy and maybe even working with a coach on this or somebody that you trust. What are my superpowers? Like, what are the skills that I have that I don't think a lot of other people have? So to go within and figure out what is it that makes you really special? Maybe it's things that you've heard on maybe your performance reviews that you've had in former jobs. What are the things that stand out that your past employers or your past managers have said, wow, you're really, really good at this? I think that's important to think about. And then to be able to tease that out and put it into either the email itself when you're applying, or if you're applying on an ATS, which is an applicant tracking system. So that might be like Lever or Ashby or Greenhouse, whatever the interface is that you're applying for a job. There's usually some sort of text box where you can put some information about yourself. So that would be basically where the email copy would go. But also to make it short, sweet, really impactful, really unique. And if you have some unique personal qualities too, let's say that you're early on in your career, maybe you don't really have a lot of work experience to point to. What are some things that make you just really unique as a person? I was coaching this wonderful junior UXer recently, and she was really into puzzles. Crossword puzzles and logic puzzles and those sorts of things. And I'm really into crossword puzzles too. I'm actually going to the National Crosswords Championship next weekend.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well,
I'm not that good.
What things you don't know about somebody?
I know. Well, the thing is, I'm not really that great. I just love crosswords. So my boyfriend entered me into the championship because we were joking about it. So he gave it to me as a Christmas present. So I'm freaking out. But anyway, the fact is that's a really amazing potential connection point, right? She just happened to, she happened to say she was into puzzles. Maybe I'm the hiring manager, right? And I'm a crossword freak. And oh, I see a point of connection. Anything that's just juicy and different and unique that provides that jumping in point, that point of connection, and that point of oh, that's really different, or that stands out, or oh, that's really interesting. I think that's really, really important to do in today's industry because it is so tight.
Right. So what you're saying is essentially try to sit down with yourself and kind of write down some sort of unique qualities to yourself, either by that somebody else identified or you yourself identified, and then utilize that in your cover letter or even a resume or something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
So on that topic about, your unique qualities and talking about yourself, I'm not going to ask you questions about portfolios. I'm not going to ask you questions about case studies because it's a controversial that everyone has their own opinions. But I have one question for you, and I have my own opinion. I'll share it afterwards. How do you feel about page, and what do you think a designer should have there?
I like an about page. I think anything that makes it personal, but still professional, I think is really good. I think so much of finding a job is about leveraging your personal brand. I personally hate that phrase, personal brand. I think it just commoditizes a human being, which I don't like, but I'm just going to use it for the sake of this conversation because I think it is important. So I think you coming across as warm and friendly, and maybe there's a picture of yourself. In America, you don't put a picture of yourself on your resume, which I know they call CVs in other countries. So if you are applying to jobs in the States, just make sure that you're not putting your age, don't put your picture. So just, I just researched certain things for the US market specifically. But yeah, a picture, I think that's a really great time to actually show some more personal things about you. Maybe you're really into dogs. Maybe it's a picture of you and your dog. Maybe that's where you talk about being a crossword puzzle or a Wordle freak or whatever it is that you love, or, your photography business on the side, or that you love, that used to be a photojournalist. I think things like that in the about page are great, but I would also just make sure that you're keeping it relevant to what you do, right? Because as a recruiter, and this might come as sort of shocking to a lot of people, but as a recruiter, I'm literally spending maybe 10 seconds on your portfolio to see if I want to go deeper with it. If I'm not seeing what I want to see in those first maybe even 5 seconds, 10 seconds, I'm probably going to move on to the next thing, especially since if I do post a job, I'm getting inundated with people responding. So you really only have a matter of seconds to make an impression. So I'm going to want to know what makes you interesting. How am I getting pulled into your story? So that's the personal side of it. But then what is it that you do? Right? Like I need a brief snapshot of like, okay, I'm a senior product designer with a really strong emphasis in research and data and analytics. I have a background in fintech and maybe, helping underrepresented people find financial freedom. That's a very specific thing. It probably won't be that specific, but, are you really attracted to like mission oriented industries, like things that just anything you can paint, anytime you can paint a more specific picture about what it is that you do, it's really helpful for both hiring managers and then us as recruiters, because we're thinking about like, where could we send you? What clients of ours, even if we don't have an open role with them, like maybe it's like, ooh, where could we actually proactively market you, which is fantastic. Like maybe the client doesn't even have a role posted, but we're like, hey, like, we work with TED, for instance, like the conferences company. So it's like, oh, like if we find somebody that has a lot of like education and maybe videos and think like mission oriented work, or maybe they've even been a teacher or things like that. And it's like, oh, okay, that's actually it's making my brain spark ideas about like, oh, where could you fit? So you don't want to be hyper specific. You don't want to make yourself too niche that then you won't fit into a variety of roles. But I think, giving me just like a real quick hit of like what it is that you do, what is your focus, but then also some personal parts. And with anything, I'd keep it nice and short and to the point. You don't want a super long, multi-paragraph about page, just something quick, light, gets the point across. You're not asking too much of your user. As a good UX person, you really want to make things, short, to the point. You want to brand yourself as somebody who can like self-edit, and that you are keeping the person who's looking at your portfolio's time in consideration. Like you're being considerate of their time.
Yeah, these are really great points. And I guess on that note of how do you refine yourself, either not too specific. I've been having some questions from different mentees, right? Especially the ones who are just starting out. They're curious to know, should they specialize in a specific industry or not? Should they become, I am a product designer that specializes in fintech or health tech or ed tech or, I don't know, automotive or whatever the case might be, right? How do you see this? Is this something that people should target and pursue because they'll be more successful than just being kind of like a generalist or industry agnostic? Or should people have a more diverse experience, which could be much more beneficial or not?
So I think they should follow their bliss. I think they should do what they want. I think especially when you're early in your career, I think that's the time to kind of, date around, right? Like see what kind of industries you like. If you're in fintech and you're like, oh my God, I really love fintech and I really love the area of fintech that I'm doing, then yeah, certainly it's easier to leverage that to get your next job in fintech. And in an industry like this, when it is tight, that might be a good strategy to do. But I think when you're just starting out, yeah, that's the time to really understand, like, you don't know what you like yet. So it's like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I've liked fintech, but like, oh, what would automotive be like? What would health tech or ed tech or, AI specific work? Like, what would that feel like? And what would that be like? And keep in mind that every company is different too, right? Like not all fintech companies are going to be the same. When I interview people, that have fintech in their background, sometimes they're like, hey, I just really don't want the big banks. I want like a, fintech startup that's like doing good things for people. And maybe it's like B2B or maybe it's B2C. But I think it's the time to play the field and just see what you like. And I think if you have that broad experience, especially early on, you can always become more niche later, which tends to happen naturally. But when you have that broad experience, I think it makes you a better designer too, because you have more, you know how to design for edge cases within different industries. You're filling your creative and your kind of logical UX well about what's going to work for this industry. Maybe that could be translated to a different industry in a different way, or that could be interesting. That could be an interesting solve or solution for another industry. So I think it just makes you a more well-rounded designer, and probably it's just more interesting, I would imagine.
Right. You touched on the subject of in the about page to kind of share what you do. How do you feel about people talking about who they are?
What do you mean by who you are?
So, and I promise I'll share my view on about pages. So when I see about pages and when I talk to other people about them specifically, I always say that as a hiring manager, right, I've been on that side of hiring manager for many years. And one of the things that to me was always important is not necessarily just understanding what you do, but understanding who you are, right? As a human being, as a person, right? What do you believe in? What do you like? What do you enjoy? What do you don't enjoy, right? So as an example, I bring to people, I say your portfolio is almost your advocate out there that makes sure that the companies that will not fit your specific goals or your desires or your worldly views will not reach out to you. So if you are a Greenpeace advocate, vegan, fighting for animal rights, you probably don't want to work for BP Oil.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're talking about yourself as a human being, your belief system, right, on your about page, so companies like BP Oil in that case will probably say, they're great, but not for us. So let's not even waste our time and their time talking to each other, right? So how do you feel about people sharing these kind of views and beliefs on their about pages?
So I think generally speaking at a high level, I think it's good. For instance, I had a candidate we were repping who had some old graphic design work, and some of it was like kind of psilocybin, mushroom, like psychoactive, like I don't know if it was like a festival or some sort of something, but it was like, basically a magic mushrooms thing. And it was really funky and kind of like 60s Haight-Ashbury style. And I said to him, it was really cool. And I said to him, I was just like, hey, just so you know, like certain companies may not respond well to this. They might think of it as being unprofessional or like just too counterculture or whatever it is. But he basically said exactly what you said, Jan, which is I don't want companies to reach out to me that aren't down with this. Right. That like, I don't want to have to hide who I am and my beliefs in my job. And if you think about it, your job is like, half your waking life approximately. So it's really important that you're able to be self-expressed and you're able to be who you are on the job for you to just be a happy person and to feel fulfilled and to feel acknowledged and respected and loved. That's what everybody wants. Right. I think if it veers too much into like controversial territory, and controversial can mean different things for different people, of course.
Yeah.
But I think if you're going to talk about your political persuasion, I think that's really, really challenging. I would definitely steer most people away from that because people are going to have all sorts of different opinions about those things. Kind of the only big button issue I can think of, but yeah, I think whatever's important to you and you still feel comfortable about the way it represents you and you feel that it's professional, it's putting your best foot forward, then I think it's a good thing.
I agree with it. Politics is definitely something that should stay personal, at least in my opinion, unless you want to talk about it at the bar or something with somebody else. So before we jump into questions or the last 20 minutes of our chat, there's one more question that I would like to ask you. What would you recommend to people that have been out of a job for over 12 months and still looking? What should they do, or maybe how should they reframe their thinking or maybe approach or anything? Because I do meet people periodically, not often, but in the last 6 months periodically, that have been out of a job for over a year and still looking.
Yeah.
What would you recommend, say, or advise?
Yeah. First of all, the first thing I would say to anybody who's been out of work for any length of time is that you are not alone. And it doesn't mean anything about you necessarily. I mean, I think there's things that you can do to maximize your presence and to maximize your chances of getting your foot in the door to get that interview all the way through to getting the offer. So I think there are things you can do, which I'll talk about. But I think just, to kind of address the emotional and the spiritual aspect of it is to just know that you're not alone. Getting laid off doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or that you were unwanted in some way. It's just the reality of the situation. It's just companies are having to cut back. The industry in our tech world is not great. I've been through 2 other such lulls before in my career. So one was 2000, 2001. So the whole tech industry I was a part of in San Francisco all fell apart at the same time. So we were all laid off. That was my first job and my first layoff on the same go. And then also like the savings and loan housing crisis in 2008. That's when I started my business, by the way. Really interesting year to do that. I was working like morning, noon, and night. And I was like, I'm not making any placements, but I know I'm really good at this. Like, what is happening? So sometimes it's just just, buckling through and just doing all the things. I think just staying focused and staying, sometimes you need to take a break and take your foot off the gas and be like, okay, like I'm thinking about this too much. I need to do something good for me. I need to fill my own, creative, spiritual well, whatever that is, go on vacation, go take walks in the park. Like just, I think it's important to have that downtime and that connection with yourself. But it's important to also, when you're ready to put in the work and to focus on the things that you can do. And I think that's also going to help you feel empowered and make you feel like, okay, I'm putting one foot in front of the other. I'm taking steps to better my situation and to find something. So it's that balance of, making sure that you're, filling yourself in a good way and being loving to yourself, but also putting in the work and putting some good hustle out there too.
Awesome. Yes. Hustle. Yeah, I remember the 2001. That's when I decided to become a web designer.
There you go.
When the internet was collapsing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hilariously, I was living in a little bubble. I was living in Canada at the time. And I was doing my BA in architecture and interior design, and I fell in love with Photoshop, and I fell in love with websites, and I fell in love with that new internet thing, right? I had no idea, by the way, that .com collapsed and all of this thing happened up until probably 2005 that happened.
It didn't collapse in Canada?
No, I mean, maybe, but I wasn't that close to the industry just yet, right? I was just starting out as a web designer. I was doing some very small projects and jobs for very local businesses. Like I had a small limo company as a client. I had a water purification startup company that I worked with. I had a few stores. I was the single source for all the Russian clubs in Toronto to do all of their marketing advertising campaigns.
Cool.
So I wasn't as close to the tech industry just yet. So it was more like a low tech, mom and pop shops and whatnot. But that was my humble beginnings.
Oh, very cool. So you were a first mover back in the day. Yeah. When I knew that the what was hitting the fan, this was back in San Francisco. I mean, this was like crazy, wacky startup, tons of money. We're all getting paid more than our parents. It was just this wild time. And we're having parties all the time, like expensive booze. And then one day I'm like, we're having a party and it's domestic beer. We're like getting Budweiser at our parties. We're like, this is not good. And then it was like, that was the beginning of the end.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. But I do have some tips. So I need to write a LinkedIn post about this in terms of like how to maximize, like when you do apply for jobs. So this comes from me posting a couple of freelance jobs on LinkedIn and then getting I might have usually like in a normal market, I might get like 40 responses, but I got like 250-ish responses just in the place where I ask people to apply. So tip number one, if something is on LinkedIn and says, hey, send it to this address, send it to that address. Don't send it to their LinkedIn. Just follow the directions of where things need to go. So that's first and foremost. Very easy, low-hanging fruit could be, make sure you're sending all your information. Like don't make people have to do another touch point back and forth because they just have so many, we have so many of these applications we have to get through. So just be kind to us, put yourself in the shoes of the user, which is us, the recruiter or the hiring manager that needs to hire someone, and help us out. And the way you can help us out is just make sure you're sending all your information. Send us your resume, send us your portfolio. For God's sake, make sure you're sending your password. If you have a password on your portfolio, do not make people have to ask for it. On your resume, make sure your portfolio is hyperlinked. Make anything hyperlinkable. You don't want too many hyperlinks in your resume, but just anything that could be hyperlinked. Do that. You don't want to have people have to copy it, cut and paste it. And all this seems kind of whingy. I know this seems kind of I don't want to have to cut and paste it. That sucks. When you multiply that by 200 times, it actually is a lot of work. Right. So I know this seems kind of small and kind of critical, but it's actually really important. Other things too, if you're sending your work, don't send tons of links. Have a single portfolio that can be on Figma in presentation form. Don't send a designy Figma file where I have to zoom in and out because most people that aren't designers like me will not know how to navigate that correctly. PDFs are great. Websites are great too. They're just, they're a little bit less malleable than a PDF. What I like about PDF portfolios is that you can send different versions to different jobs. So if you're applying to fintech jobs, you put all your fintech stuff up front in the PDF. If you're applying for edtech jobs, you put all your edtech stuff up front. Or if it's a mobile specific job, put all your mobile stuff up front. So you really just want to the point I'm trying to get across is just really spoon feed this person with short emails, really powerful information that's exactly what they're looking for. Like, don't make them have to hunt for it. If you do have a website, like for instance, the job I was looking for somebody was like a B2B insurance portal. So they'd have to have experience like that in their portfolios. You can send your portfolio link, but what's really helpful is to send specific URLs of where the relevant project lives. So here's my main URL, but here's some like specific links for the stuff that you're asking for specifically. That's really helpful.
Yeah, I will add to that. Last year, I was invited to Pratt Institute to do 2 workshops, or twice to do the same workshop on portfolios and case studies. One of the things that I find it fascinating is that every single aspiring or young designer just starting out, right, or even the ones who've been around for a year or two, I always say, you're a UX designer, you're a product designer. Your job is to understand your user, understand how will they use your product. In this case, you are the product, right? Your website is the product. So if you go to places like ADPList or something similar to that, you can find a bunch of different recruiters you can book time with, and then run tests with them. Literally use them as your users and do usability studies with them. And identify how do you tailor your website to these type of people for them to navigate and use your website.
And I really like what you touched on, Jan, in terms of that personal connection. So getting personal feedback from a real person. This is also, if you take one thing away from this whole session today, this is it, which is anytime you can get out of the hamster wheel of applying through bots, meaning you're applying online, you're applying through some sort of link, anytime you can get away from that and instead apply through a real person, that's infinitely better. So I would much rather, I think a much better strategy is to focus on maybe 20 jobs at 20 different companies that you're really, really interested in, and to really go for them in a very deep and focused way. So to go on LinkedIn, find out who you know that works at that company. Can they get you in? Do you know somebody who's a second connection that works at that company? So somebody that you know that knows that person. Can you get an introduction? If that person's open to making an introduction, I would just make sure you're like spoon feeding them the information that the company would need about you. So kind of applying to that person. Can you pass my information along internally? So having your information pass along internally, going to a real person, it's most likely going to be seen. If it goes through a bot, who knows? Who knows? Like maybe it's not even being seen by a real person. Maybe it's being seen by a recruiting coordinator that's really junior, that doesn't really understand what UX is. And they're just looking for like keywords on your resume, which is definitely what a bot is doing. So leverage your network, go out there, go to events, meet people. If you can do it in person, great. Even if it's like, digital or Zoom meetings, that's, second best, but just making sure that you're understanding that people are your biggest assets right now. People are the things that are going to get you jobs. So third-party recruiters like us, we're great to connect with because, we're going to be able to give you transparency into a recruiting process. And if we're working with you, we can maybe help you on your resume and your portfolio. Just as a side note, if people do want coaching help on their resume and portfolio, I do offer that for a fee. So you can also get in touch with me at the email, the joanne@joanneweavergroup.com. So if you want just like some, we can do like one session, multiple sessions, but I think just connecting with people in whatever format that is crucial right now. Really, really crucial.
Human connection, people. Always remember, human connection will always win you way more than just cold calls and cold emails.
Yes.
On that note, we got left about 10 minutes. I want to shift a little bit to some questions from the audience. And we have the first two. So first one comes from Sarah. And Sarah writes, "Hi all, Sarah, product designer. I'm wondering how to avoid getting too specialized. I want to dive into biotech, but with no clients yet, I'm worried about limiting my options. Any tips on balancing focus and opportunity?"
So it sounds like I'm curious, like how early in your career you are. I think that would be important to know. So Sarah, if you can write that in the chat, like how many years of experience do you have?
Thank you for this call. I have 2 years experience fully in a company working for a SaaS, but now I'm transitioning to freelance or contract work.
Okay, got it. So you've got SaaS in your background. So 2 years of SaaS?
Yeah.
Okay. And you'd like to transition into biotech?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you want to avoid getting too specialized into SaaS? Is that what you mean?
No, more into biotech because my only experience is in SaaS and product management. I'm just unsure because I don't have the experience in other areas. And if I only focus in tech, in biotech, and if I didn't do biotech before, is that too specialized? Like I have no client for now. So whatever client is coming to me, technically, I should not niche too much, if that makes sense.
So, sorry, Sarah, I just want to make sure I understand your question so I can answer this in a helpful way. So you've got 2 years of SaaS experience. You want to go into biotech, but you're afraid if you go into biotech, you might be too niched in biotech?
Yeah, because I have no client right now. Even though I do want to get into biotech, I fear that if I don't put the rest like tech or, other industries, that I would limit myself to only biotech clients, which was refrain myself into job search or client.
So I think if your question, and tell me if I have this right, I think if your question is, am I too niched and only wanting biotech clients without having the biotech experience? Is that summing it up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting question. So I think it depends on your financial situation. Like, do you have like a little bit of a nest egg or some savings you could get by? And are you currently employed in SaaS right now?
No, not anymore.
Okay. So you're basically in this situation where you don't have a job, you're needing to make some income, you want to transition into biotech, you're afraid that's too niched. So I have two minds about this that are not conflicting. I think they can coexist. So I think I always think people should follow their bliss. If you're excited about biotech, go for biotech. Like, yay, biotech, like do it. Do whatever you can to get in. I would focus your efforts in that area. I would see what you've done in your past that is relevant to what these different jobs in biotech are asking for, right? So just making sure you're connecting those dots for the company who's hiring to see like, okay, what have I already done in my 2 years of experience that I have? What have I done that's relevant? So I think there's nothing wrong in like going for those roles and focusing on them, but if you feel like, okay, I've been hitting this for months now, I'm sort of running out of funds, I'm a little bit nervous about finding a job, then you may want to leverage your SaaS. And maybe just to cover your bases, maybe you want to look for SaaS jobs at the same time as biotech, just so you feel like you're in it to win it. You're getting conversations, you're out there, you're practicing, like there's forward momentum. Because I would imagine it's going to be, SaaS is going to be the path of least resistance because you have that in your background. So it might be good just to kind of like a safety school, when you're applying for colleges where you're like, okay, I really want to go to this school, but like I'll go to this school if I have to. Maybe it's good just to do those both at the same time if time allows it. But I think you can also just kind of usability test it, as Jan said before, right? You can just see, okay, maybe I give myself 2 or 3 months of like really focusing on biotech, doing everything I can to make connections within biotech. Who do I know within biotech? Who can I talk to? Who can I become like personal with that can help me get into biotech? So make sure you're doing that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, just to make, to do that and to focus on it. But then after, the usability testing. If you find like maybe after 2 or 3 months or whatever you can financially withstand, you're like, okay, this isn't really working. I'm finding it tough to break in. That just might be a message from the industry saying it's just not the right time right now. It could be a great time in the future, but maybe right now the market's too tight. A lot of companies are looking for people that have that specific kind of experience or that specific vertical in their background. But that isn't to say that you shouldn't go for it and try it. Because I think that also just make you feel like, oh, like I'm doing something that's good for me and I'm paying attention to my wants and desires. And I think that's really important just for us to be happy, fulfilled people. And you'll never know if you can get it if you don't try.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just give it a try, see if it works.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck.
I'm going to jump to the next question. Let's see. We have here from Bryant. Hi, Joanne and Jan. Is it true that some companies post ghost jobs? If so, what could be the reason? I've seen some companies posting the same roles for years on boards like LinkedIn. What are your thoughts?
So I think we can tackle this one really quickly. I think, yes, they do post ghost jobs sometimes. They're just like, oh, we just really want to always see like good UX or product designer. So they might just keep it up there just to get an influx of people in. So if something does open really rapidly, or maybe it's like a freelance thing that they need to, fill really quickly, then they have people in their pipeline. Or it could be that that's just a really crappy job that they can't fill, or a crappy company and they just don't have the resources to fill it, or they just don't know what they're doing to fill it. So that could be could be kind of an orange flag, maybe not a red flag, but, I would just take it, note it, and, proceed as you go.
I'll add to that from a slightly different perspective. Some companies show hiring because to the public or the outside world, it shows growth, regardless if they actually have it or not. And some companies do utilize the tactic of showing that they're hiring while they're really not. I've seen this happen before. So if you see if you see us the same job from the same company for years, I would just ignore it.
Yeah.
Question coming from Janine, wait. Hi, I may have missed the subject, but what can we expect in terms of a positive change in this hiring environment? I'll go first, and I'll say that I think that we will see a recover probably early 2025, and I'll let Joanne answer quickly as well.
That's what I'm hearing from a lot of people too. So I think that's kind of a general kind of thought process around it. But, I'll say that who knows? If I knew the answer to that, I'd go buy a lottery ticket today. It's also, keep in mind also it's an election year here in America, and that those are always wonky years. It's like, it's unsure what's going to happen in the market. So people are a little shy about hiring. But it's also just, I think we're also seeing just all the aftershocks of what happened last year with so many layoffs. They're still happening. It's not even aftershocks. It's still earthquakes too. So seen little blips of activity already this year. Now it seems a little slow again. So hopefully we'll have some more blips. Hopefully we'll be back and running soon, but we'll see.
I do think so too. Next question coming from Asha. I have worked in startups where there are few users and mostly worked on business requirements. So those products don't have much outcomes or metrics to show in portfolio. How do I portray this in portfolio? So I'll answer this one. Every single thing you've done has an outcome. Some can be user facing, some can be business facing, which means you've done something that was beneficial to the company. It might not have specific analytical metrics, if you will, but you can definitely track what was before and what became after and kind of compare between the two. And it's about telling the story. I understand some companies might be really interested to see some numbers, but in these type of cases, it's useful to just kind of tell the story of what happened and how it happened and how did you improve some business metrics themselves, right? I don't know, the company performed better or the product became better or the usability studies showcased that the product was better, not necessarily actual users.
Yeah, agreed.
Next one, we have G Yum. After the job interview and receiving a rejection email, would it be okay to ask for feedback on the interview? Yes. You might not get it though.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Absolutely. I agree. Definitely.
Sharon Usintao asks, hi, Joanne. Could we connect you on LinkedIn?
Absolument. Yes. My email is earlier in the chat. But if you see my name at the bottom of my screen, my little video, it's joanne@joanneweavergroup.com. So you can see how I spell my name. So joanne@joanneweavergroup.com. You'll need that to connect with me on LinkedIn. I used to have it open without my LinkedIn being without my email being required, and I was just inundated. So I try to keep it a little bit bespoke, a little bit tighter.
Yeah. Okay. We're at time. We have 1 minute left. And here we are at the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening and spending that time with me on this episode. Now, I do want to mention that everything that has been said, it is my opinion and my opinion only. It does not represent any companies, entities, persons, and whatnot that I have worked with before, currently, or in the future. It's only my opinions. Once again, I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing or hearing or talking to all of you in the future. If you have any questions or you want me to cover any specific topic or any specific subject, please find me on LinkedIn, reach out, send me a message. And I would really appreciate to get some sort of a review or feedback of how you like this podcast or this specific episode. If there is anything you don't like, you like, please just share with me so I can learn and make this experience a lot better, because this is a project for me. And so, thank you once again. And on that note, never stop learning, and I'll see you all next time.